Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen here with life coach Cindy Chavez. Today is Wednesday, September the 9th, 2020, and it's 4 p.m. New York time. But wherever you are in the world, thanks for joining us for another episode of LOA Today, your daily dose of happy. And Cindy, I was telling you before the show about all this interesting, crazy stuff that's going on that just kind of reinforces how this law of attraction stuff works. In fact, I won't reiterate for the audience because they already heard a lot of it yesterday. But at one point during the show with Dan yesterday, I mentioned to him and to Alex, it's really cool when you're watching a manifestation as it happens. You know what I mean? You can just see stuff unfolding right before your eyes. And you say, whoa, this stuff is cool. This stuff is really cool.
Absolutely. And, I had this thought that I didn't say to you, but when we were talking about, you were talking about the money game and
Right.
manifesting amounts of money that just get blown off, like we just don't even realize it. And then I had this other thought too, is that sometimes those hows get us back into trouble because we're trying to figure out how something could happen. And I remember I've told one story before about getting a check in the mail for, it was a good check. It was a thousands of dollars check out of the blue because my homeowner's insurance had overcharged me this really small amount, but every month for 15 years. So
wow.
Up, right. And it was like, whoa, I never would have been able to guess that. But I had another one that happened in the last year sometime, probably a decade ago or longer. My father had asbestosis from working in the shipyards, and so there was a big lawsuit over that.
Sure.
And at some point, the people involved all signed the paperwork. We got a payment, and it was like, this case is now closed. There will not be any more payments. You agree to that. It's like, yes, okay. It's, the people have paid you.
Right.
All right. And then 10 years later, I got a check in the mail one day and I recognized the attorneys, on the check. And I was like, I wonder why they're writing to me. And I opened it and it's a check for, I don't know, it wasn't a lot, but it was over $100. Right. And it was like, and it was like, this is attached to this, it's like, but we've known 10 years ago, we knew this was done. Right.
Right.
So there's always some way, for it to come in. And we just don't always know what it is.
and not just money, with everything.
With everything. Yeah. I had a aha moment yesterday talking with a colleague, and I won't go into detail of why it came up, but the aha moment was that, oh my goodness, everyone that hires me as a coach starts making more money. Now, I was mentored by one of the best money coaches in the world when I first started coaching a dozen or so years ago. But I'm not a money coach. People don't generally hire me to fix money problems.
Yeah, you're a relationship coach mainly.
They hire me because they want to fix a relationship or find a relationship, or sometimes they hire me because they want a whole bunch of different stuff in their life because I'm a life coach, right?
Sure.
But they want more peace, or they are having a conflict, or they're confused about something. But it hit me that almost without exception, and I mean, I've coached every, physicians, lawyers, housewives, stay-at-home moms, teachers, artists, designers, musicians, 5-star chefs, an A-list actress. I mean, I've coached people from all walks of life. And whether they usually make a what would be considered a moderate income or are millionaires, they always start making more money when they start working with me. And I was like, why is this? Why? I mean, I've been pondering it, and all I can come up with is that when people start working, not with me, probably any good life coach, is that they start loving themselves more. They start respecting themselves more. They start feeling like they're more worthy of good things to come their way. And when that happens, magic starts happening, and part of that magic is money starts showing up.
Well, actually, David Strickle the stream of David, he was on yesterday. He had a personal issue to take care of, but the previous week, he pointed out something to me that you and I knew intimately because he pointed out in the Abraham Hicks book, Money and the Law of Attraction, they spend about 1/3 of the book talking about how to attract money. Most of the book is about attracting health.
I know. I would actually even say it might be less. Like, I remember when we were reading it, we were like, are you going to talk about money in your money book? Are there dinosaurs on your dinosaur tree?
Yeah, right.
Right? Yeah.
So there's another example of the same phenomenon. I mean, essentially, anytime that you're working on yourself in some way to be a better, conscious, deliberate creator, it's going to produce results in all areas of your life.
Yes, that's it. And as a matter of fact, one of my earliest mentors in this kind of thinking, before I was ever a coach, it was just my own like learning about this kind of stuff, used to say that when he would work with a person that had one area of their life was really, they were really emotionally charged about it. Like, let's say they had a work situation at their job that was just awful. That's probably why they came to him, because, this is terrible, right? That he would start working with them on some area of their life, like their marriage or like, their hobby or something that wasn't emotionally charged, to make that area better and better. And once that area started shifting, everything started shifting across the board. So yeah, I think that's why, but it just was one of those moments for me that I was like, oh my goodness, like what is happening?
It is cool. I mean, that I think was the essence of what I was saying to you before we started the show. It's cool when this stuff happens and you really start to notice it and you start to observe like, wow, I mean, this is what's happening all the time. No, the only real difference is I'm finally noticing it. Even when I'm not noticing, I'm still noticing later on.
It's kind of like when we talk about when you want to break a habit that that at the beginning of your, you make the intention to break some kind of habit, and like maybe it's a habit of something that you're saying all the time, and then you start noticing it after you've said, like an hour later, you're like, I wasn't going to say that anymore. And then you start noticing it right after it comes out of your mouth. Whoops. And then you start noticing it when it's halfway out. You're like, nope, not going to say that. And then pretty soon you finally start noticing it when you're just thinking it. And eventually you change the habit. But I think it's the same way in this direction. It's like, oh my goodness, how did I not notice that? And then pretty soon we're watching it. When you get into that place where you're watching things manifest in live, in real time, I guess.
Yeah, in real time, right.
Yeah, it's very cool.
It is very cool.
So yeah, when I first hopped on to the show today before we were live, I asked Walt how are things were going, and he said, interesting. And I said, you mean interesting like may you live in interesting times interesting? Then he started giving me the details like, oh wow, yes, magic is happening, things are unfolding, and that feels so good.
By the way, Jeffrey in the live stream says hello. He says, first of all, it's good to be vibing high with others. And he also says, I know what you mean. My clients have manifested things that neither of us expected when we started working together. So there's another person experiencing the exact same phenomenon.
It's so cool. You're working on someone because they want to attract a relationship, and then they show up at a call one day. They're like, guess what? I got a raise today.
Right, exactly.
You're like, yes, all right.
It's so cool. Well, something else that's cool is we are doing another Neville Goddard book with a little bit of interruption from Hurricane Laura and from a wonderful 12-year-old named Isabel.
Oh my goodness. She just like warmed my heart. She was the sweetest thing. Listening to her say that ever since her baby sister was born 4 years ago, she's had a desire to be able to walk her to her first day of school. I can't stop thinking about how sweet that is. I was like, you were like a little angel. Oh my goodness, that was so much fun.
So that was worth getting away from Neville, but it's time to get back to Neville because we got 2 more parts to do of this book at your command. And I still don't even know where you found it. I'm not sure you even know where you found it, but we found it. That's the most important thing.
That's so funny. I don't know either. All I know is that someone had requested, could you talk about this Neville lecture? And I finally listened to the lecture, which was good, but it was, I wasn't sure it was going to translate to the show the way it is written out. And so in the process of looking for it, I was looking for a transcript of it.
Right.
I found a transcript of this like Neville book. I was like, wait, I never heard of that Neville book. So we went and looked at it. Neither one of us had ever heard of it. lo and behold,
Ah.
hey, that's a pretty cool thing, to 50, 70, 80 years after you're done, for people to be discovering, they think they've read everything you've written and then they find something else.
Well, it's also an example of how manifestation happens. We just described it right there. I mean,
Right.
you were focused on something that wasn't specific about that particular book, but it was related to it. And
Yes.
guess what happened?
And what were the kind of things that we would have said before? And we did say them. We said,
We
well,
did.
we've read all the Neville books. There are no more Neville books to read. Whoops.
Well, we also
we
also
crossed over
said
into a parallel universe where there are more Neville books.
well, we also said that it was fun to do the Neville. It'd be great if we could have more Neville to do, and then it shows up,
And then and then we decided to look for more, and we found another one. So,
Yep.
so this book, At Your Command, is very Neville-ish, of course. We have uncovered a few things in this book that were a little bit different than what we've heard Neville say before. But basically, again, he's using a lot of expressions, even full quotes and scriptures from the Bible, both the Christian Bible and the Jewish Bible. And he always has a very unique perspective on what those verses mean. So sometimes we have to stop in our reading and get out the Neville decoder ring and remind ourselves what he's saying. We'll probably do that today, no doubt.
By the way, something I wanted to tell you about, I think it was the last part of this book that we talked about. He talked about tithing.
Yes.
And we talked about it as an energetic tithing. So I brought it up with Dan Mangana on the show the next day.
On the Money Game show.
On the Money Game show.
Yeah.
And asked him, were you aware of Neville talking about this? Because we had never heard Neville do this before. He says, oh, yeah. In fact, I engage in forward tithing. And okay. I kind of looked and I said, okay, tell me more. He says, forward tithing, that's where you tithe before you've made the money. So he gives 10% of what he's anticipating he's going to make. I thought it was a really interesting concept.
Yeah,
and in fact, yesterday's show, he listed all these different, they weren't really charities, but they were like groups of people around the world who he regularly sends money to every Friday on his tithing thing that he does. He sends his 10% out every single day. And it's like, I mean, the coolest one was a group of 2,000 Muslims in some country. I can't remember what it was. And the way he described it was, I can just imagine these 2,000 Muslims praying for Dan Mangana because he's giving them all this money continuously.
How to get thousands of people to pray for you. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Well, I don't know if I mentioned this last time, but I want to, and that is the idea of dividing your income with 30% off the top in three separate 10%, 10%, and 10%, 10% going to people in need, 10% going to a charity, and the other 10% going towards magic, which is generally blessing someone without them knowing where it came from. And I know, I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but I have. It was really fun. We were standing in a coffee shop back in the day when we could actually go to places. And there was a couple in front of us that were buying a bunch of stuff, and we were waiting. And they turned around a couple times and kind of smiled at us. We didn't have a conversation with them because they were engaging with the barista and they were buying their drinks and doing all their stuff. And then they left. And then it was our turn. And the barista was watching them go over the top of our head, like watching them. And they were out the door and watching them, and they were down the street. And he said, okay, the people that were standing in front of you put $20 towards whatever you ordered. And he didn't want you to know it was them. So I was waiting for them to get out of, vision, out of view before I told you. And we were like, wow. And so what we were buying was like $6, right? So we said, okay, well, the next people that come in, just pass that on to them, right? And it felt so amazing to be the receiver and the giver, to receive it and to pass it on. And it didn't cost us anything either, right? It's like, but it was so cool. And so that other 10% was like for things like that, like just saying to the waitress, we want to pay for that person over there's dinner or whatever, and I thought, oh yeah, I could get on board with this. That'd be,
That's a cool approach. I like that.
we used to on tax day, which this day was a different day than normal, but
That's
we
true.
used to take like $50 and change it into like $5 bills and just hand them out. Just randomly walking down the street, just hand a $5 bill to a person and say, have a nice day. And and it is, you would think we were handing out $100 bills for the like joy that was showing in people's faces. They would be shocked, surprised, happy, woohoo! And it'd just be like, wow. It was like, well, that was $5 went a long way, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, it makes sense. I mean, ultimately, what you're really doing when you do that is you're recognizing a person.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening. There's somebody took the time to give them a gift. It didn't even matter what the amount was. Somebody took the time to give them a gift. Somebody they didn't know, what they call a random act of kindness.
Right? Yeah. It's very cool. I'm going to encourage everyone to do that. Yeah. So speaking of, today is 6 months for me to the day. 6 months since I have been to a shop, to a store, restaurant, to anywhere.
Wow.
Yeah. And I'm starting to get a little cabin feverish. So
yeah.
Wear your masks and wash your hands, people.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was funny.
So
when I was
even
telling that
even your
story, I was like,
groceries?
that was a long time ago.
Even groceries?
Well, my handsome sweetheart does the grocery shopping.
Oh, okay.
Because what we figured is that, we saw this terrific diagram of the difference between like if 1 out of 10 people stayed in, right? And if 2 out of 10 people.
Oh, I see.
It was just amazing. And so we thought, well, he goes out to go to his office. He deals with clients, not many, but he does. So since he's already the one going out and we're only shopping once every 2 weeks, he'll just do the shopping. And the cool part is, as much as I do like to shop, he has 7 planets in Virgo. So we now have a spreadsheet for groceries and an inventory and,
So there are benefits to that then.
Yeah, it's awesome.
That's cool. Okay.
So, but I'm ready for the world to, I don't know that we'll go back to what we think of as normal, but I think whatever we get to will be better. So I'm ready for that.
Yeah, I'm not sure what normal is, to be perfectly honest, but if what we're talking about is going back to a time where we were able to interact again, to go out and again, to enjoy stores and restaurants and all that kind of thing, no doubt in my mind, not only is that coming, I'll even predict here on the air, because I've said it privately to friends, I think it's going to be here by next spring.
I'm ready for it. I'm ready for hugs.
Yeah.
Like I'm ready to hug my friends and my kids and shake hands, and it may be fist bumps for a while, but I'm ready. All right, well, let's see what Neville has to say.
Sounds good.
Neville says, I am the vine and ye are the branches. So we know right now that he is quoting from the Bible, but he goes right into his definition. He says, consciousness is the vine, and those qualities which you are now conscious of being are as branches that you feed and keep alive. Just as a branch has no life except it be rooted in the vine, so likewise things have no life except you be conscious of them. Just as a branch withers and dies if the sap of the vine ceases to flow towards it, so do things in your world pass away if you take your attention from them, because your attention is as the sap of life that keeps alive and sustains the things of your world. So this is like the great gardening analogy, right? And that our attention is the sap of life that keeps those branches alive. So he says, to dissolve a problem that now seems so real to you, all that you do is remove your attention from it. In spite of its seeming reality, turn from it in consciousness, become indifferent, and begin to feel yourself to be that which would be the solution of the problem.
Yes.
For instance, if you were imprisoned, no man would have to tell you that you should desire freedom. Freedom, or rather the desire of freedom, would be automatic. I kind of feel that way. Wasn't I just cabin fever? I'm certainly not in prison.
That's true.
Freedom, or rather the desire of freedom, would be automatic. So why look behind the four walls of your prison bars? Take your attention from being imprisoned and begin to feel yourself to be free. Feel it to the point where it's natural. The very second you do, those prison bars will dissolve. Apply this same principle to any problem. Now, let's talk about this for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Because Neville is a master. So when we think about watching a master, I don't know if you've ever watched any of these YouTube videos of almost anything, but of people creating pottery or people operating some big machinery, and they make it look so easy.
Sure.
It's like, oh, that's easy. But they are a master.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I read Neville and Neville says, hey, just take your focus off the prison bars and they'll dissolve. I think, okay, that's not to say that I disagree, but I am saying not to beat yourself up if you've got some problem and it's been hard to take your focus off of it, right?
Agreed. Absolutely agreed.
Because I think that one of the main things that we can do, and it isn't always easy, but is to stop talking about it. I've used this example so many times because it seems so simple, but it really was astounding to me. And gosh, it was a long time ago. I don't even know if it was this past January or the January before, but when I had that head cold that was trying to come on.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And that was back when we were doing podcasts in the early morning, like it was 5 a.m. for me or whatever. And my brain kept telling me this story. And the story wanted to come out of my mouth as words. I wanted to say, my head hurts, my throat hurts. I think I might have a fever. I'm starting to feel like I have chill, all these ideas, because it was my reality I was experiencing.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing I had to do before I could get to change my thinking about it and focus on what I wanted, which was to feel energetic and vibrant and healthy and my throat feeling great, my voice being fine, was to first stop talking about it.
Yeah.
So we so often talk about the problem, talk about it. And sometimes it's necessary because that's how we brainstorm and we work out solutions.
Well, sure. I mean, especially if you're asking for help, you have to talk about it in order to explain what the problem is.
I told somebody this past week, I had told a client that being ultra independent was a trauma response. I can do it myself. I don't need any help.
Mm-hmm.
I got this. And asking for help is really hard for a lot of us.
Mm-hmm.
And the example that I was telling my client was, think about a general in the military. They're commanding for help, right? Everyone is helping, and they're not weak. They're the strong point. They're the powerful one. Mm-hmm. So it's not weakness to ask for help, to rally the troops, to get support, right? And so you're right. When something is going on that's a big problem, sometimes we do have to talk about it and ask for help. But as soon as we get to the point where we can stop talking about it, I think that's one of the first steps to putting the focus somewhere else. As long as those words and stories are coming out of our mouth about it, we'll never be able to put our focus somewhere else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this is actually very similar to what Abraham Hicks teaches with what is now their 5 or 6 step process, depending on which of their lectures you listen to. But compared to the old 3-step process, it's been through a number of steps. But now the process starts off with step 1, identify what you don't like. And then step 2 is, what do you like instead?
Right.
I mean, this is my way of saying it. They say it a little bit differently, but that's the gist of it. That's the essence of it. And what we often do is we get stuck on step 1. We just keep saying, well, this is what I don't like, and I really don't like it. In fact, here's all the reasons why I don't like it, and here's why all the reasons I won't like it tomorrow, and the reasons why I didn't like it yesterday. We never get to step two.
Yeah. And then, how many times people will say that they changed their thought about something, and then it just, like Neville says, dissolved, right? Just went away. So part of my plan for that is, what if you did like it?
Yeah, appreciating it. Oh,
well, like today, I've been appreciating how many things have been good. Like I appreciate technology. I appreciate that I get to see you every week through technology. I appreciate my clients that are able to connect with me via telephone, via Skype. I appreciate, that I can call my kids or FaceTime my kids. I appreciate that I love my house, right? Because I'm stuck here. I appreciate that, I do have access to the things I need. So there's a lot to appreciate. And as soon as I start going down that path, then I am taking my focus off, wow, I'm stuck at home.
There's also the more advanced form of appreciation where you actually appreciate the thing you don't like.
Right. And that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, what if you started to appreciate the prison bars?
Yeah.
Right. Which is, you're right. It's an advanced practice. But the way you can start that advanced practice is just by asking your brain a question. And it's the question I just asked. Well, what if I did like it? What if I liked this? What if this was actually pleasurable for me?
Yeah.
It's hard when you're eaten up with mosquito bites and you're telling yourself, what if I really like this itchiness, right? It's like, oh, no, I don't like it. I hate it.
Well, I'll tell you, I've been experimenting the last week or two with a variation on it. For those things that I just feel that total, I can't possibly like this thing, but I know I need to find some way to appreciate it.
Yeah.
Usually it's associated with a person. So whenever I run into that, I think to myself, well, I appreciate that person's doing the best they can.
Yes. Right.
That's really effective. I'm amazed how effective that is. That just takes a lot of the juice away from it.
Right. Everyone's doing the best they can.
Yeah.
Another thought that's right along that line is to always assume positive intent. Because especially if it has to do with people, other people, we can really go down this rabbit hole telling ourselves some stories that are just assumptions. And so if we're going to make assumptions, let's assume positive intent and make some assumptions that feel better. Right? All right. So
the most amazing, I want to make one more comment about it. When I do the thing where I say, well, they're doing the best they can.
Yeah.
Not only does the juice of it, the negative energy go away, what's amazing to me is how quickly the thought goes away. The whole thought of this person behaving in some way I didn't like or talking about something I didn't like, it disappears from my attention. So it's not like I even have to remove my attention. It just kind of removes away from me.
Well, and that's what happens anytime we shift focus.
Yeah.
And my guess is that the behavior sometimes even stops.
Sure.
Yeah, because what we resist persists.
Exactly.
So I think it's important when we read Neville, and Neville says, hey, if you just put your focus somewhere else, all your problems will go away, that we recognize that we are human. Some of us are still working on mastering these concepts.
Oh, come on. All of us are still working on mastering. I don't know anyone who's got it all down pat. And I know some pretty advanced people, but nobody's got it down pat yet.
Okay, so.
Or as Abraham Hicks likes to put it, you can't get it wrong and you'll never get it done.
Right? Right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I remind myself of that a lot. And the other thing is about timing. I had someone mention today that, they've been through a very abusive relationship, and over the past year have gotten out and are working on healing and working on doing the things they need to do. And they made the comment about, well, I finally did this, and better late than never. And I said, better late than never is relative. And it's also a judgment. And coming from someone who stayed in a broken relationship for over 2 decades,
yeah.
Right? The thing is that we're always in the right place at the right time doing the right thing.
That's a great point.
Right? And it's so important to give ourselves that, and to not beat ourselves up for, why is this taking me so long? Or why did I not see this when I didn't see it? We don't know what we don't know. And so Yeah, advanced. Neville was advanced.
By the way, Jeffrey says I appreciate being advanced.
Me too, Jeffrey. Jeffrey and I were just wafting down the river in France looking at a castle. So
That's right.
all right. So Neville goes on to say, and he's talking about how prison bars are not, how this same process can be applied to anything. He says, I've seen people who were in debt up to their ears apply this principle, and in the twinkling of an eye, debts that were mountainous were removed. Okay, I want to make a comment.
Okay.
Because I was talking to somebody, and they were talking about debt.
Okay.
And they were talking about a particular amount of debt.
Mm-hmm.
And I almost laughed out loud because they were so stressed out about this particular amount of debt that in my perspective was so small that it was just nothing.
Oh, geez.
And here's the thing, I wasn't judging them. I helped them to see something. And that is, I named a person that we both know that's a millionaire. And I said, if so-and-so opened a statement and saw that that was their balance, the amount you just named that you're very freaked out over, how do you think they would respond? And they said, oh, it's nothing. I said, right. So sometimes it's the amount of debt you can carry comfortably and not be freaked out over. And it's different for everybody. But when Neville talks here about, I've seen people who were in debt up to their ears apply this principle, and in the twinkling of an eye, debts that were mountainous were removed. I look at that two different ways. And that is, yeah, maybe some big check came in the mail and they were able to pay off their debt. Or maybe they just realized that the mountain was actually a molehill.
Yes.
And they stopped being so freaked out about it.
And I would vote for the second one, not necessarily because I know what Neville's story background was, but simply because in my own experience, that's how I got rid of a chunk of debt. I mean a big, big chunk. By simply getting to the point where I just stopped worrying about it.
And then it just takes care of itself.
It took care of it. And then I manifested one of the biggest out of the blue manifestations I'd ever had in my life. It was cool.
Right? Seriously, I've had that same experience.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget the time that we decided, when I said out of my mouth that I wanted to stay in this 5-star hotel downtown to raise my money vibe. You remember this?
I do remember this, yeah.
And then through a series of good luck, bad luck type events, we ended up living in that place for a month. But the day we got our key to our hotel room door, at that time we thought we were going in for 4 days. I opened the door, went in, and first of all, the door looked like a bank vault. It was painted to look like an old-fashioned bank vault door. And I didn't know that when I wanted to stay there. I was just like, this is a fancy hotel, and if we stay there, we'll just start lifting our money vibe. The door looked like a bank vault, and when I went in, the mirror was etched, and it said on the mirror, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change.
Oh boy.
And I about fell out. I was just like, what? I took a picture of it. I was texting it to my friends that knew I was going to stay there to lift my money vibe, right? It was like, oh my goodness, can you imagine? And yeah, things started changing, but it was not it was not the way I expected, right? It was completely
It almost
different.
never is.
Right?
Truly.
So I think, some of these mountains are removed because suddenly we realize they're not the mountains we thought they were.
That's right.
He says, I have seen those whom doctors had given up as incurable take their attention away from their problem of disease and begin to feel themselves to be well in spite of the evidence of their sense to the contrary. In no time at all, this so-called incurable disease vanished and left no scar. Now, we could talk about that because, there's a balance between being in denial and not taking care of something, right? Yep. I mean, somebody said, well, what you focus on expands. And I said, well, have you ever grown a garden? Because, if you just decide to not look at the weeds, they'll take over.
It's true.
So sometimes we do have to pay attention to what's going on and take good care of ourselves. And also, we can take some of the focus off. We can put the focus on the healing. we can put the focus on, the idea. I love this idea. Every symptom is a healing gesture.
Mm-hmm.
So when we have a physical symptom, our body's trying to heal itself. That's why that symptom is happening, right?
That's true. Yeah.
So if we can put the focus on the healing and still be responsible and take care of ourselves without completely putting all of the focus on the horrible thing and on how bad we think it is and how incurable it is, right?
Yeah.
I always tell people that are in that path that miracles happen every day, and science and medicine make new discoveries every day.
Mm-hmm.
And some of those discoveries turn out to be a miracle, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Sure.
Yeah.
And you're right that there's a balance that's involved here. There are two ways I can think of to describe and maybe even give examples of that. One is there's a difference between denying something and imagining what you want instead. Denying something continues to focus on the thing you don't like. It just says that thing that I don't like isn't there, but you're still focused on it.
Right.
Even though you're denying it, you're still paying attention to the thing that you don't like. It requires an actual shift, a shift to the thing that you actually like. So if you're in a disease state, and especially if it's one where the symptoms are fairly harsh, which is often the case with diseases that are, mortal in their probable outcomes. Well, that can be pretty challenging to do. So the balance in this case isn't about denial. If you just deny it, you're just reinforcing it at that point, because all you're feeling is that lack of health.
One of the things that I just read something about this recently, but I know I've read it plenty of times, stories about people that find out that they have a diagnosis like this, and especially when it's time limited, it's like you only have a month to live or whatever. Right. The idea of the people that make the choice of, well, then I'm going to do all those things that I put off. I'm going to live life to the fullest. I'm going to make sure that I've always wanted to do this or that. I guess I better do it now.
The bucket list.
That they're what are they focusing on then? They're focusing on that list. They're focusing on doing those things. And a lot of times their disease goes into remission.
Sure. Yeah.
And so, I think there's that balance. I think, yes, use your good judgment, use your brain, take advantage of science and medicine and all the progress we've made in those areas to be good to yourself, and focus on what you want.
and understand also that people still end up dying. Even good people, even people with positive attitudes still end up dying. That's just a part of it. We had that happen. A good friend of my wife's died just a few days back, actually, a few days before Labor Day, from pancreatic cancer. And he was a very wonderful person. He was relatively upbeat and so forth. But, people still die. And the reasons that they die are going to be different in each case. We're talking about Neville, and Neville doesn't actually go into the way Abraham does. So forgive me for continuing to bring Abraham into this. But Abraham points out we pick the time that we die. We do it through our intentions.
We are living on Earth where people die.
Yeah.
we do have a recognized lifespan,
We live in a world of contrast, and that's part of living in a world of contrast. Doesn't mean that you can't heal. You can heal. Doesn't mean that you can't get past something like that. You can. But bear in mind, when you're in the middle of dealing with it, it can be pretty overwhelming to actually get your mindset over there. And it's pretty obvious to me, just from having talked to his widow, just how many challenges there were in that way. I mean, not just, I don't even want to get into their stories because it's obviously that's their private stuff, but it was very clear to me from the conversations we had with her just over the weekend after his passing that there was lots of stuff going on in their lives that undoubtedly they had attracted. Everything that's in our lives we attracted, that was really just reversing anything that he could possibly be doing to get himself into the right frame of mind to heal. I mean,
and like you said,
it was like this endless list of stories along that line.
We come here to experience things, and then there is an end to our life. So
There is.
my wish is that everyone lives as long as possible and has as much joy as possible. But who's to say that everyone signed up for that, so to speak? You know, I mean, I just, we all
Exactly.
have a journey, and it's just, I don't like the idea of thinking that someone did something wrong, had a wrong mindset, thought something wrong, and that's why they didn't heal. You know, that's just really narrow-minded to think that. Because like you said, we're human, like
Yeah.
we're all human, and we have an end to our life. And, you know,
And plus also, there's the other part of it that is death is not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, it's not like we end our existence.
right.
It's
I was
not
just
like we
going to
just
say,
disappear.
because I use the phrase an end to our life, but I mean, an end to the life of this physical body I'm in. It doesn't mean that my
That's
life,
all it is.
yeah.
Yeah.
And if
So
energy
once
can't
again,
be destroyed, then
in
part
fact,
of me lives
this
on.
is a big thing, by the way. I think it was 2 weeks ago with the Stream of David. We had sort of a not a lack. We had fewer questions than we often do, so I had more opportunity to ask my own questions. So I asked him point blank, "Okay, here's something I've wondered for the longest time. I always wanted to ask Abraham, so I'll ask you because I got you here. Is it possible for energy?" No, that's not the way I said it. I said is energy ever destroyed? That was one half of my question. And the other half of it was, is it true that every single time that we create consciously, we are increasing the amount of energy? So therefore, energy is always increasing in quantity. And I emphasized the word quantity. And the stream said, well, yeah, of course. Which means it's a continuous growth in energy. There is no such thing as energy remaining level. There's no such thing as energy decreasing. There is only increase in energy. You know, so when you look at it that way, you say to yourself, well, death is almost meaningless at that point.
Right.
It's really meaningless.
It's not, it's the people that lose the person that's died that go through the pain.
Yes.
Right? I mean, okay. So Neville says, your answer to whom do you say that I am ever determines your expression. As long as you are conscious of being imprisoned or diseased or poor, so long will you continue to outpicture or express these conditions. Now, we were talking, I actually think we had this conversation before we were live. We were talking about mindset work. This before the show, we were talking about, I don't want to keep repeating myself, but sometimes we talk to each other before the show. And the idea that when you do mindset work, it takes time. And you may be doing mindset work for 6 months and thinking it's not, nothing's changing.
Sure.
But your mindset is changing. It just takes time. You're getting your brain on your side.
Exactly.
And what happens sometimes is that when things finally do boom, you wouldn't have been able to handle that before the mindset work. It's a process. So, you know, when we're talking about changing our thoughts, Neville sometimes makes it sound like it can happen in an instant. And I think it can happen in an instant.
Oh, sure.
It often doesn't happen in an instant. I've told people before, and I stand by this, evolution is slow. Transformation can happen in an instant. And I have enough coaching experience to say I've seen plenty of times just one idea just completely change somebody's mindset. And they were different after that idea. And things started to change. But a lot of time, mindset work takes time. Think how long it took you to get in the mindset of wherever you are that you're wanting to change.
No kidding. No kidding. Yeah, it's true.
Sometimes people come for a coaching session and I'm like, what do you want to work on? And then they tell me like 10 things, and they're 10 things that have been the result of like 15 years of a certain mindset. I'm like, yeah, we're probably not going to fix all this in an hour. But
in fact, the whole Abraham concept of a vortex, the vortex is where the stuff instantly manifests. The reason it hasn't shown up isn't that it didn't manifest, it's that you haven't received it yet. Reception is different from manifesting. Being in a place to receive something, it's you getting out of your own way. It's not the thing that hasn't manifested. It's just that you haven't received it yet.
You haven't allowed it. Yeah.
You haven't allowed it. Yeah.
So let's see. When man realized that he is now that which he is seeking, and begins to claim that he is, he will have the proof of his claim. The cue is given you in words, whom seek ye? And they answered, Jesus. And the voice said, I am he. Jesus here means salvation or savior. And literally, that is what the word means in Hebrew. Yeshua means savior. You are seeking to be salvaged from that which is not your problem. I am he, or I am, is he that will save you. If you're hungry, your savior's food. If you are poor, your savior is riches. If you are imprisoned, your savior is freedom. If you are diseased, it will not be a man called Jesus who will save you, but health will become your savior. Therefore, claim I am he. In other words, claim yourself to be the thing desired. Claim it in consciousness, not in words. And consciousness will reward you with your claim. You are told, you shall find me when you feel after me. Well, feel after that quality in consciousness until you feel yourself to be it. When you lose yourself in the feeling of being it, the quality will embody itself in your world.
That's an interesting way of describing it. Losing yourself in the feeling of being it.
Mm-hmm. You know, sometimes people say, well, I don't know what it is to feel whatever, right? It's like, I don't know what, I can't remember what it feels like to be healthy. I've been in pain for so long, or I don't know what it feels like to have $1 million in the bank. I've never had $1 million in the bank. And what do we always say to that? And Neville would say it too. That's why you have an imagination.
You mean we get to invent it?
Yeah, we get to invent it. And this is a little off track, but one of the ways that I invent it is, and I've talked about this in some other places, maybe here. Every year, I ask myself what I want to create that year. And when I recognize what I want to create, it's generally then, who do I want to be? I want to be that person that has that thing. I want to be a best-selling author. I want to be a coach. I want to be whatever it is. I want to be that person. And what is she like? And then I write a character sketch.
Oh my.
I mean, it's like I write a character sketch. What does she like to eat? What kind of makeup does she wear? What perfume does she wear? How does she wear her hair? What kind of jewelry does she wear? What is her house like? I start answering those questions for myself. And then I go create that thing, because it's a lot easier for me to step into that by, I don't know, wearing red lipstick or whatever, right? I've done this, you know, and then that thing starts to unfold because I'm starting to embody that. So when Neville talks about this, you know, when you lose yourself in the feeling of being it, it's like acting. It's like when someone gets into character.
Yeah, the method is it's often called method acting.
Yeah. So that's what I think Neville is talking about. It's like, just become that. Lose yourself in it. And, you know, if it's really severe, lose yourself in it. Create a container for yourself to lose yourself in it for 20 minutes. Put a timer on for 20 minutes and lose yourself in your imagination of what that would be like. I mean, it doesn't have to be 24/7 is what I'm saying. Neville talks about falling asleep at night. That's the perfect time to do it, to lose yourself in that being. He even tells a story. It's one of the first Neville stories that I think everyone hears, when he wanted to be with his family in Barbados.
Yes.
And there was like no money to get him there. There was no spot on a ship to get there. I mean, it wasn't going to happen. He started, when he would go to bed at night, he would imagine that he was in his bedroom in his old family home in Barbados, in that bed. What did he hear? The ocean outside the window, and what did it smell like, and he would really put himself there. And within a short period of time, the money came, and a ticket to board the ship, everything just worked out, right?
Yep.
But he was feeling himself already there, but I don't think he was doing it 24/7. He was making a prescribed period of time. So I think that's a good method.
Something I also have noticed is important lately is that after we've been practicing this stuff for a while, we can, kind of like what you were talking about before, we can be pretty tough on ourselves. And one of the ways that I had learned to be tough on myself was to not give myself enough credit for what my intention had been. Like thinking, oh, I have to repeat it again. I wasn't strong enough, or I wasn't
Whoa.
I wasn't in the moment so much. I wasn't feeling it enough and all that kind of thing. And I had some experiences, I can't even remember the details of them right now, but they happened within the last week that reinforced for me I was doing just fine. I just wasn't giving myself enough credit for doing just fine.
Yeah. Yeah. It surprises even me how many times I reassure somebody, you're doing great.
Mm-hmm.
And they breathe a big sigh of relief, like, oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Like, and I know it's like, okay, they didn't think they were doing great. They were beating themselves up, that they weren't doing enough or whatever. So yeah, I love this. You are healed from your problem when you touch the solution of it. Who has touched me? For I perceive virtue is gone out of me. Yes, the day you touch this being within you, feeling yourself to be cured or healed, virtues will come out of your very self and solidify themselves in your world as healings.
Mm-hmm.
It is said, you believe in God, believe also in me, for I am he. Have the faith of God. He made himself one with God and found it not robbery to do the works of God. Go you and do likewise. Yes, begin to believe your awareness, your consciousness of being to be God. Claim for yourself all the attributes that you have heretofore given an external God, and you will begin to express these claims. For I am not a God afar off. I am nearer than your hands and feet, nearer than your very breathing. I am your awareness of being. I am that in which all that I shall ever be aware of being shall begin and end. For before the world was, I am. And when the world shall cease to be, I am. Before Abraham was, I am. This I am, says Neville, is your awareness.
That's probably the most directly in any of the stuff we've read of his so far, the most directly where he said, you are God, and more precisely, you are not the external God. You are the God who you are inside.
I love that he says, claim for yourself all the attributes that you have heretofore given an external God.
Yeah.
That's really, really
That's
powerful, right?
very direct.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you really
Except the Lord.
can't escape that one.
No. Yeah, you can't fold it up because he is saying it in a very open way.
Mm-hmm.
Except the Lord build the house, they labor in vain that build it. The Lord being your consciousness. Except that which you seek is first established in your consciousness, you will labor in vain to find it. All things must begin and end in consciousness. So blessed indeed is the man that trusteth in himself, for man's faith in God will ever be measured by his confidence in himself. We talked about this before, this idea that your faith is measured by your confidence in yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You believe in a God, believe also in me. Put not your trust in men, for men but reflect the being that you are and can only bring to you or do unto you that which you have first done unto yourself. You see, he's talking about men reflecting the being that you are.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that everyone is a mirror for us. Everyone is reflecting something back to us, right?
Well, it's interesting you use the metaphor of the mirror, because I was just going to mention that that's the great value of the mirror exercise. You're basically reinforcing for yourself by doing that mirror exercise. I love you as you're looking at yourself in the mirror. I trust you. I believe in you. You are reinforcing for yourself the God within you.
Yeah. Oh, that gives me chills. So he goes on to quote more, no man taketh away my life, I lay it down myself. He says, I have the power to lay it down and the power to take it up again. No matter what happens to man in this world, it is never an accident. It occurs under the guidance of an exact and changeless law. No man, and in parentheses he says manifestation, comes unto me except the Father within me draw him. I and my Father are one. Believe this truth and you will be free. Man has always blamed others for that which he is and will continue to do so until he find himself as cause of all. I am comes not to destroy, but to fulfill. I am, the awareness within you, destroys nothing, but ever fulfills the molds or conception one has of oneself. It's impossible for the poor man to find wealth in this world, no matter how he is surrounded with it, until he first claims himself to be wealthy. For signs follow, they do not precede. To constantly kick and complain against the limitations of poverty while remaining poor in consciousness is to play the fool's game. Changes cannot take place from that level of consciousness, for life is constantly outpicturing all levels. Follow the example of the prodigal son. Realize that you yourself brought about this condition of waste and lack, and make the decision within yourself to rise to a higher level where the fatted calf, the ring, and the robe await your claim. So I think this is a really powerful chapter. And I think that something that I think is important to talk about in the last few minutes we're together is that when Neville says, or when anyone says, he says here, realize that you yourself brought about this condition of waste and lack. Don't understand that as being shamed about anything.
Right.
Because a condition of waste and lack may be exactly what you needed whenever you created it to learn whatever you're learning from it.
Very good.
Right? It's like,
absolutely.
When we start to get the idea that it's better to be rich than poor, you see all that judgment in there? Then does that make rich people better than poor people? I mean, there's a lot of judgment in there.
There is.
Now, it might be more fun and it might be more comfortable. Like I know I can do a lot more when I have a full bank account than an empty bank account. Sure. That's okay. But to some of these statements, when we read them, and one of the big problems that I think is really prevalent in LOA circles is shaming people for having experiences that don't feel great.
And I'll add to that, not just shaming people, shaming ourselves.
Oh gosh, that's the number one. Feeling like we don't measure up, feeling like we've done something wrong, feeling like we're not as masterful as we should be, feeling like, all kinds of wrong. And shame, money shame is huge. I mean, money shame is a big, big thing. And, wealth is not any kind of stamp of anything. It's just money.
Well, it's an energy. That's what money is. It's energy.
Well, it's an energy that's manifested as something, right? Yeah. So it's like, wealth is not merit.
Right.
Right. And so create some wealth if you want to create some wealth. Don't beat yourself up because you have the need for it.
I think the distinction is the distinction between preferring something and, like you say, judging about something.
Yeah.
If we're saying I prefer to be wealthy, or I prefer to be healthy, or I prefer to have great relationships, that's great. Everybody is allowed to have their preferences. There's nothing.
Then create it.
There's no judgment of others involved in that. It's just simply saying, this is what I like. This is what I prefer. But the moment that we start thinking about in terms of others, that's where the judging comes in. And now we're no longer in the same space as I prefer. We're in a different space at that point. That's the difference.
Yeah, so true.
It's a huge difference.
And we get trained into this, right? Because
easily, yes.
It's like if you get a good grade on that test, you'll get a present. If you're a good girl, Santa's going to bring you something wonderful.
Right.
Like we get trained into that thought process, but now we can untrain ourselves and just create what we want.
Isn't it great to be a free conscious creator?
It is.
It's the best thing.
Yes.
It's really wonderful. It's also the best thing to have a great partner to do at your command with. We've got 5 parts done. We got the 6th one coming. That's going to be the conclusion of the book.
Left. Yeah.
So, really good. Before we part for the day, I want to remind people to share the LOA Today app. It's one of the reasons it was created. It's one of the ways that you can find out about the various goodies that our wonderful co-hosts have donated, including Cindy Chavez with the Lovely Magician's Guide to Soulmate Success. So share the wealth. Help other people who are looking for that soulmate, who are trying to find that perfect relationship for them. Share the LOA Today app and they get it as part of it free. How cool is that? So good stuff. So thank you, Cindy. Wonderful interpretations as usual. We didn't even have to get the Neville ring out today. I don't know what's going on
I
with
don't
that.
think we did. What's happening?
I don't know.
We're fluid.
I guess that's what it is. We actually get this stuff now. Hard to think we actually used to be, terrified of this stuff because it was all this biblical talk that we didn't like. Now we're just kind of blowing through it. It's crazy.
We went outside of our comfort zone and we discovered something great. So
how about that? So, we'll be finishing up next week. So look forward to part 6. Thank you very much, Cindy. Thank you, live streamers. Thank you especially to our podcast listeners. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.
bye, everyone.